Alright kids, hi! It's been a while since it's been me, you, the camera, nothing else, nobody else here. But I am doing this for a friend of mine, not for my own volition. No, I mean, I'm doing it for fun as well. I got my own means at the end. But, I am doing this for Andres Perez, aka KaijuNoir, who tagged me in a thing. Andres was himself tagged in a recent series of Tokusatsu sort of Q&A based videos where certain YouTubers involved in that community have been tagging other YouTubers involved in said community and asking them questions, answering questions that they've been asked regarding Godzilla, Tokusatsu, giant monsters, anything and anything geeky. I think I said anything twice, but you know what? That just really tells you how much we're covering here. So it's very expansive. So Andres was tagged by D-Man1954, I'm pretty sure, and Andres tagged me as one of the 5. And that's why I'm outside on this day that we're supposed to get an eclipse, 2 weeks after he made said video tagging me, in order to do it. So you know what? It may be late, but somebody once said it's better late than never, so I'm going to stick with that. So the way this works is Andres asked 5 questions at the end of his video, where he answered the 5 questions that D-Man asked him. And I have to answer those 5 questions that Andres asked to me and the 4 other people who he tagged. And then I have to tag 5 other people and ask 5 questions of my own to keep this going. So we'll get to that at the end. We won't worry about that for the moment. So let's just focus on what Andres asked me and answering those questions. And we'll see how this goes. So, alright, we'll start at the very top here. So the first question Andres asked was favorite non-Godzilla Toho film. So I broke this down into 2 because I was a little, I'm not saying that the question was vague, I get it, but it's still a little expansive beyond the specifications. So non-Godzilla Toho film is obviously a movie that doesn't have Godzilla in the title or isn't part of his series. So first things first, I put Rodan, which is not a Godzilla movie. He ain't in it. And it's all about Rodan and the Meganulas and the little and the Japanese people around them. So it's self-contained, not a Godzilla movie. That is by far my favorite of those giant monster movies that don't have Godzilla in them that Toho put out. I mean, Rodan, it's probably also my favorite horror film that features a giant monster. I think it's the most effective at striking that tone. I mean, man, just the build-up with going into the mine, discovering the bugs, and then slowly but surely the true scope of what's going on is unfurled. And even if you know it coming from a million miles away, which every time I've seen that movie I do, it always hits me. So, Rodan. But Rodan is technically part of the Godzilla franchise, so I picked another one as well. Rodan is a part of the Godzilla franchise just like any single Marvel movie is part of the Avengers franchise. You know, they're all part of the same world, they all interconnect, and they're all sort of bound by similar themes. You know, nuclear energy, human folly, and just fucked up shit happening to Japanese people. That's the theme. And giant monsters, of course, is the other thing. But this one doesn't have giant monsters in it, and it's also an Ishiro Honda movie, so I wanted to throw it out there as well. The Human Vapor. I love the Human Vapor. I only saw it recently, thanks to certain individuals. You know who you are. Thank you. And I loved it. It's sort of like the Japanese equivalent of the Invisible Man a little bit. His powers are sort of more interesting than the Invisible Man, which is what struck me so much about it. And the special effects are, they're incredible. They're not like airtight, the Human Vapor. But it's, for the time, it's amazing. It's like going back and watching the 33 Invisible Man movie, but perhaps more so, because it's so different the way they use the smoke and how he uses the smoke himself to kill people. You know, it's not just him going around strangling people like the Invisible Man. He suffocates them with his very presence. It's incredibly creepy and unique. So the Human Vapor, it's another Toho movie as well that has a good human cast before you really get to the sci-fi stuff. You know, it's a crime movie at first, and there's a cop and there's a reporter, so they're sort of our protagonists regardless of the actual Human Vapor before we get to him, and they work as protagonists even though they're not the most like layered, in-depth characters. So it's one of my favorites as well for that reason. Alright, so time definitely hasn't passed at all. Let's move on to the next question then, shall we? So next up, Andres asks me, what is your favorite cinematic monster other than Godzilla? That's a really, really broad question again. And I thought about going like, oh, I'll pick monsters that like aren't really discussed that much, like not big names or something, but I really just had to go honest with this one. So outside of Godzilla, these are the three that I consider to be like my real personal favorites. Kong, number one. Technically, he's been in the Godzilla franchise, but you know, it's been an interesting time for Kong in terms of what continuity he sits in. But he is ultimately his own thing, and King Kong is one of my favorite franchises in general. So in terms of giant monsters, he's up there. I love Kong. I love his mythos. I love his characterization. I love the tragedy of him in his own way. You know, last of his kind. You know, being wiped out by humanity, and just all the mythos of Skull Island and the sadness and loneliness of him has always intrigued me. And also, he's just really good at beating the crap out of things. By the way, I apologize for the soundscape. You know, as we are clearly outside, it's hard to block all that out, but I figured it would create a nice ambiance. But Kong is my number one. Two is definitely, I decided to pick a few different ones. Kong, I put at the top, but he's, again, been in Godzilla's franchise. So one that hasn't at all yet, Gamera is number two for me. Love Gamera. Guardian of the Universe is one of my favorite things ever. The Heisei trilogy is amazing. The Showa movies are a joy, all of them in their own ways, even Super Monster. And then The Brave is a very, very interesting, well-made, well-told story that I will probably never sit through again. So, Gamera, again, though, that's a big, big name. He's a big franchise. You know, perhaps with the possible exception of the past few years, nobody's going to debate the popularity and relevance of Gamera. But with Gamera, it was always the uniqueness of him, man. That the Atlantean mythos, the whacked-out nature of his design. I mean, the roar on Gamera alone is enough to make him stand out. So, got to give him props. But just to get out of the big, big names, I thought I'd throw out Ymir as well, also non-Japanese tokusatsu monster. Ymir is from the Ray Harryhausen movie 20 Million Miles to Earth, one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Ray Harryhausen movies. And his design is, again, just a very unique, stands out a lot. He has a standout roar. Those are some big things with me. I always love a combination of reptilian and humanoid features. He's probably the best example of that outside of Godzilla, so he definitely stands out for that. Amazing special effects. You know what, Plane? Get out of here. Nobody wants you. Amazing special effects. Some of Harryhausen's best stop motion. Again, if not the best. And that fight with the elephant, man. What more do you want? Just good shit, good shit. So, those are my favorite cinematic monsters outside of Godzilla. Again, I'm giving a couple of examples for each just to cover some bases. And I also feel bad that I took so long to do this, so I figured I might as well throw out some extras. Favorite piece, this is the next question, favorite piece of original Godzilla-inspired media. This one I had to think about a little bit. One, because I wasn't sure if we were just discounting anything that had Godzilla in it, and I think the idea of the question is, it's anything that was inspired by Godzilla, that has nothing to do with him or his franchise or anything like that. So, I guess something along the lines of like Pulgasari, although that's probably more like a ripoff. You know, this is just your more original kaiju work, or giant monster work in general, that is inspired by the character and themes of Godzilla. So, I got two. Again, one, because he's kind of I'm going to say the first one because it's kind of a knockoff, and then I have another one. So, the first one that's kind of a knockoff is Gorgo. Gorgo was one of my favorite giant monster movies in general, and as a movie that's inspired by Godzilla, I think it leans more in that direction as opposed to a knockoff, because it manages to carve its own identity outside of being a giant reptile attacking a big city in 1960s Sudomation. I think that the film pulls from a couple of different sources in order to do that. It's got a little bit of the Lost World vibe as well, a little bit of a King Kong vibe with taking the monster back to civilization and, you know, pissing off Mother Nature. That's also very Godzilla. However, I just feel like Gorgo managed to carve its own identity, and the quality of the special effects and just the production in that movie alone sets it apart from all the other knockoff stuff. So, and again, I think that it overcomes being a knockoff to just simply be people who were inspired by the Japanese to do their own thing. So, I love Gorgo. But in terms of stuff that I think transcends even being inspired by Godzilla, Night of the Fire Beast. Andre said this one too. I knew he would, but it's unquestionably one of the most interesting things that has been done in recent years with the Tokusatsu and Godzilla franchise as its inspiration, because I've talked about it before. I did my review. Go back to that, listen to that, read the goddamn comic. Both of them. There's 2 of them now. It's just so cool to see such kind of an insider in terms of being a guy who's part of the fandom. Several guys giving their thoughts on said fandom and said genre by, you know, kind of creating their own story within it and then creating their own story about making it. And that's just really cool. And the different bases you can cover there in terms of how these franchises have persisted over the years and what they mean, and, you know, do they matter? It's all really fun to consider that in that lens. And just the sheer fun of throwing it into this, you know, metafictional world where these giant monsters don't actually exist. You know, we don't have a Dorugan movie, unfortunately. But you know, Christopher Martinez and Jonathan Claude have convinced me that we need one, so I'd like to see that at some point. I just think that in terms of sheer originality, that's the mark, my friends. So, Night of the Fire Beast, give it a read. Both of them. Night of the Fire Beast, that's what the first one's called. The second one is called Fire Beast Dorugan X Gran, The Horror from Space. I'm positive that's the title. I don't have my copy around, but it's got that classic, you know, giant monster, overwrought, you know, versus title that we all know and love. So it was hard for me to try and remember the adjectives in there. So again, go ahead and give those a read. You can get those online. So next thing, favorite. Oh no, that was the one I just answered. Video. Ooh, oh wow, okay. Video I'm proudest of, and the one I think needs the most improvement. Oh boy. So this is getting personal now. We're not just talking about giant monsters now. Fuck, I'm not good at this. So proudest, I would have to say, videos that I look back on the most fondly, and I go, oh my god, I did that. Not getting text messages from people. That's not it. That's not my proudest moment. My proudest moment, I would have to say, twofold. The Week of Kong of recent. These are 2 recent things. The Week of Kong and the Lost Genesis, the audio drama that I did a few months back. So those 2 things I would say are my proudest achievements. I picked them both because they reflect different things that I'm into. You know, one of them being storytelling with, you know, by creating my own narrative with Lost Genesis, and then the other thing being talking about shit, you know, other people's creations with the Week of Kong. And also talking to a friend of mine. That's Dylan McCandless, Super DM64 in the Week of Kong. So Lost Genesis I was really proud of because I had that story in my head for a long time, and yes, it is only the first part of a story that I have yet to continue, but that part of the story was in my head for a long time, and I knew exactly how I wanted to do that part, and to do it in a successful way that I look back on even still now and go, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I was really proud of that. And I'd love to do more audio drama stuff like that because I really enjoyed doing it. And again, it's just one of the things that I think worked out the best with what I had in my head. You know, oftentimes I do these videos and it looks a lot better in my head than it does when they come out. But that was one of the examples, and it wasn't a video, it was an audio drama, but it was one of the examples where I didn't feel that way. It was exactly how I planned it. So I'd like to continue to do it that way. And with Lost Genesis in particular, I have to get the story mapped out completely in my head before I continue it. So that's why there's been such a gap. So I'd like to get to that place where I'm certain what I want to do with it in the next entry again, and then I'm sure I'll have just as successful of an outing as last time, hopefully. I say the Week of Kong because that's another one where planning and putting it together just led to success in the end. We got it out on time, we did them all. So there were some audio hiccups, there were some tech issues. You know, we had never done commentaries that many of them before and to that extent, but it was still pretty successful in my eyes, and I had a really good time doing it. It wasn't one that was like a total chore to do. Doing those commentaries is so fun, and talking about something that I'm really passionate about with a friend of mine is always something that I'm more than happy to do. So the Week of Kong is another thing that I'm really proud of, and I got him out on time. The last time I did something like that, Godzilla Palooza. Well, that wasn't the last time I did something like that, but I've struggled with doing regular series that are supposed to come out on like a set schedule, because I don't always make the whole thing before I start releasing it, and then that leads to problems, as I'll retroactively discuss in a second. But the Week of Kong did not have that. And Talking Apes, I think we had a little glitch in terms of when they were coming out. If anything, I think I released one of them too early. I think that was the problem with Talking Apes. But there were a few hiccups with Talking Apes in terms of the tech side of things that the Week of Kong didn't have. So ultimately, when we do these in the future, I hope to have them be as tight and fun as both the Week of Kong and Talking Apes. But the Week of Kong just definitely worked out the best in my opinion. So Godzilla Palooza, on the other hand, going back to old school, not old school, but a while ago Zazubaar. I'd love to go back and redo those. I was young. I didn't really know. Well, I knew mostly what I was doing, but I didn't have great video editing software. I was using Windows Movie Maker still at that point. I would love to go back and redo those. Edit them differently, speak differently, script them out more. I would love to go back and do that again. But I think what we'll do for Godzilla instead is we'll do something like the Week of Kong or Talking Apes. We'll do commentaries on them. Probably not all at once. We'll break them up into some kind of thematic, like little chunk, and we'll do them bit by bit. But I would love to do that again and go back and talk about those Godzilla movies that I definitely got a lot of the stuff that I wanted to say back then out. A lot of my opinions still remain largely the same, actually. However, the way in which I articulated them, and also some of them I don't feel the same about, I would like to articulate them differently, with different opinions. So I will definitely do that at some point with a new series of Godzilla commentaries. The other one, though, Godzilla related, is the Godzilla Gang. I would love to go back if I had the time and the energy and the talent for stop motion. I would go back and redo the Godzilla Gang, because man, that was a blast. They were a blast to write more than they were a blast to make. Oh, just doing a satirical series where you get to make fun of the Godzilla franchise by having those characters hang out was a blast. And at the time when I originally did it, I hadn't seen a whole lot of that, of people giving those kind of personalities to Godzilla characters. Now there's a lot of that on YouTube. I'm not saying people are ripping me off. I'm just saying that when I did it, there wasn't as much of it. And now I feel like I don't really have to do it because there's so much of it, and so much of it is a million times better than what I did with the Godzilla Gang. So, you know, I would love to do it, but I just don't think I just don't think I have the means or the moxie, at least at the moment. So someday the Godzilla Gang will come back. Maybe not in their own series. Maybe they'll come back as a piece of something else. Dylan and I have batted back and forth, like maybe we bring them back in DFOS, because we've been doing the commentaries on those old videos on there. So maybe we'll do that, but no plans. So why don't we continue to move on, just so we don't make this too crazy long. So the last question that Andres asked me is, what is the franchise that you are most interested in getting into, Tokusatsu related or not? I guess the one I picked is Tokusatsu related. It's more just Japanese, though. He said Super Sentai, and he should get into that more so. Or maybe it was specifically, I think it was specifically Jew-Ranger. So he should do that. Jew-Ranger is awesome. But I've already seen Jew-Ranger. I would like to get more into some of the other Super Sentai series. That's why I didn't put that as mine, though, because Andres mentioned Jew-Ranger at the end of his. But I would like to finally get into Die-Ranger, so D and I can cover it on DFOS. I'm dying to see O-Ranger. That's out now, too. So I've been meaning to see O-Ranger since I've heard about it. Like, that's the one that, story-wise, looks the most interesting to me because of the whole post-apocalypse thing. But the one I actually wrote down here was Devilman, an anime, or I don't think it started out as an anime. It's been many different forms of Japanese media, but it's a big Japanese franchise that I've always seen stuff from. I don't know a lot about it. I know that there's monsters in it, and I know that it's about a guy turning into a half-demon type of thing to fight off said monsters and demons. Again, I don't know really anything about it, except it looks fucking cool, and I'm very into that kind of story of monsters being fought off by other monsters or men who are themselves also monsters, that kind of deal. So I'm very interested in that. I saw the I would assume it's like an 80s, 90s anime version. I've seen bits of that online in like video compilations and stuff, people talking about anime, and it looks fucking incredible and exactly up my alley. You know, I've recently been getting into like Hellsing and stuff like that, so it looks in that vein. So I'm very intrigued. So that's my plan. I'm gonna get into the Devilman. So not exactly Tokusatsu related, but Japanese. So yeah, that's it. That's all the questions that Andres asked me. So thanks, buddy. I appreciate you including me, even though I took 2 weeks to answer. I did have a good time doing it, despite that I took so long to do it. So yeah, that's a lot of info out there. So I'm sure I rambled for way longer than everybody else did. So what are you gonna do? That's my style. I do have to ask and tag. I have to tag 5 people and ask them 5 questions, though. However, I ain't gonna do that. Well, I'm going to ask the 5 questions, but I'm not going to tag 5 people, because I don't have 5 specific people that I want to tag, and if I was going to tag them, I might as well just tag everybody. So anybody watching, you have been tagged by me, Bill Worster, aka Zazubaar, to answer these 5 questions that I'm about to ask you. Do that in any way you see fit. The comments of this video responses are not a thing anymore, but you can do a video and then send it to me on social media or on YouTube. Well, YouTube is technically social media. But any way you can get it to me, so that way I know it's a response to me. You can tag me in it however, you know, on Facebook or Twitter, hashtag it, whatever you want to do. You can do hashtag, what was the... I've been tagged, or to tag you're it, that's what Andres' video was called. So you can just hashtag that, and I guess I'll see that and know that that's what it is. So I tag everybody, because 5 specific people would just be picking hairs. I want everybody's opinion on these 5 questions. I hope that's not a cop-out, even though it totally is, but that's what I'm doing. So everybody, you've been tagged. So what you will have to answer is these 5 questions. Which upcoming giant monster movie are you the most excited for? Number 1. For me, that's Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm going to give all my answers for these as we go. And Godzilla, do I have to explain it? I mean, King Kong vs. Godzilla is like my favorite thing ever. So they're remaking it in America? What? I'm so ready. Who is your favorite Godzilla knockoff monster? So, I mean, this is pretty obvious, right? We're talking Pulgasari, Yongari, Gorgo a little bit, you know, even Gamera to a certain extent. Any monster that looked at the success of Godzilla, you know, regardless of what era, and said, hey, we're going to do exactly the same thing with a slightly different monster. So anything that kind of blatantly ripped off Godzilla in that way is fair game. For me, though, my personal fave is Aegon. Aegon has fascinated me ever since I watched that TV show, the ambiance of it, the suit. Shinkichi Sekizawa's involvement always fascinated me. What long-dormant giant monster would you like to see return? So as in giant monster we haven't seen in a movie or really any medium in a long time that you'd like to see come back. I have 2. Speaking comic book-wise, these guys have popped up recently, so this doesn't really work, but movie-wise, please, I'd like to see these guys come back. Both Godzilla monsters. 1, Biollante. Well, Godzilla and Biollante now have an interesting relationship given what's happened in recent Godzilla news. However, I'd still like to see Biollante come back. Godzilla vs. Biollante is another one of my favorite things in Godzilla movies. And her origin always fascinated me, and the idea of Godzilla having a sort of kin in a big plant, there is lots to be done there thematically with his own lonely and, lack of connection with anything in the world type of characterization similar to Kong. So I'd like to see something like that come back. But also just the idea of Godzilla's cells being rampant all over the world and causing all kinds of strife. That's always been one of my favorite Godzilla stories, so that's why. Gigan is the other one. Gigan hasn't been in a movie since Final Wars. He got his ass kicked a lot in that movie, but still, he looked cool and no complaints there, but that was 13 years ago. I'd really like to see Gigan come back in a movie. The comics have done great things with Gigan. The Godzilla Rulers of Earth series and a few of the other IDW comics have done cool stuff with him. But I want to see him do more, man. I want to see him come back. I want to see him... I mean, I doubt Legendary would ever do Gigan, but I would love to see what that would look like. And I mean, I'm disappointed they didn't do him in the anime that's coming up. Maybe they will. Maybe there's 2 sequels to that have yet to really be announced. So maybe they'll do Gigan in those. That would be the most sensible thing, in my opinion. But I'd like to see Gigan come back. I like the claw hands, man, and I love his roar. Gigan's roar has always been one of my favorites. And to me, Godzilla's arch enemies go like this: Ghidorah, Mechagodzilla, Gigan. Those are the big 3. So that's why I'd like to see him come back. I got 2 more questions though. All right, so this is in regarding said Godzilla anime. What are your thoughts on the recent developments regarding it being, Godzilla Planet of the Monsters, to get more specific? I'm very mixed myself. We just talked about it on the last SOS, so go listen to that. That's like the main point of the conversation, so I won't discuss it here, but I'm very mixed on it. And the last question: how long have you been active in the Tokusatsu online fandom, and what keeps you engaged? So for me, it's the passion, whether inspiring or misguided. It never ceases to impact me. We get a lot of rage wars online when people start to discuss these giant monsters and their associated movies. But to me, as as misguided as that may seem, the fact that people get so passionate about this stuff, I think it says something about it as a medium of entertainment and as a fictional pantheon. I just think it's fascinating, and it always inspires me, again, whether good or bad. So what keeps you engaged? Whether that be on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, any fucking forum that you might be able to find on Google. Whatever it may be, what keeps you coming back? That's what I want to know. So, kids, I have rambled way too long for this kind of thing, so I appreciate you sticking with me. And I hope that you give me your answers in the comments or YouTube videos or Facebook messages, however you want to do it. Don't message me. Comment on write a status and tag me in it. Do that. So, I look forward to hearing from all of you there. And thanks again to Andres for tagging me, and again, I apologize for taking so long to do it. And I also would like to thank D-Man1954 for tagging Andres and thus tagging me, and Matt from Monstrosities, I believe is the gentleman's name who started this whole thing. So that's a Tokusatsu vlog channel, so you can go subscribe to him if you want to see where all this insanity started. So I think that's all the time that I have for you today. So until the next time we meet, that will probably be in the next episode of the Demons from Outer Space, which will be on, we have to finish up our Doctor Who review. We did part 1 of that last time. But the next proper new topic will be the prequel novel to War for the Planet of the Apes, Revelations. So get reading, kids, and I hope to see you there. So until then, I am Bill Worster, aka Zazubaar, and don't get blinded by an eclipse.